The hour of convening has arrived, and the Senate will now come to order. At this time, I'd ask that all unauthorized persons exit our great chamber. Chair recognizes the obviously well-rested senator from the 53rd.
Mr. President, it's a great day. It's beautiful outside and inside. We cherish your leadership, and I know that we're going to have a great day here in the Senate chambers. A couple of things in history. The Congress approves the building of the Lincoln Memorial today in 1867. That was built from the granite from Stone Mountain, most of it. And also, today is Piano Day. That's why I'll be playing an ensemble outside in a little while. And we want to also remember our Vietnam Veterans Day, and we welcome home all of our veterans and thank them for their great service. The journal's been read and found to be correct, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none, and the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills and resolutions, please bring them up here to the Secretary's desk. Mr. Secretary, first reading of Senate bills and resolutions, please.
Senate Bill 312 by Senators Jordan of the 6th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 10 of Title 17 of the OCGA relating to sentence and punishment so as to enact the Georgia Restoring Justice Act to provide
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 313 by Senators Jones II of the 22nd, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act providing for the consolidation of Richmond County and the City of Augusta, approved March.
State and local government.
Senate Bill 314 by Senators Harrell of the 40th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the OCGA relating to primaries and elections generally so as to provide for registered voters to cast a ballot.
Ethics.
Senate Bill 315 by Senators Brass of the 28th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 43 of the OCGA relating to professions and businesses so as to provide for the licensure of individuals in the practice of applied behavior analysis.
Regulated industries.
Senate Resolution 319 by Senators Gooch of the 51st and others, a resolution recognizing the current electoral college system as the best way to elect the President of the United
Rules.
States. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary, will you please read reports of standing committees?
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Pursuant to Senate Rule 2-1.10, the Committee on Rules recommends that the following legislation do pass by substitute. House Bill 67 do pass by sub. House Bill 218 do pass by sub. House Bill 273 do pass by sub. House Bill 454 do pass by sub. House Bill 469 do pass by sub. House Bill 477 do pass by sub. House Bill 317 do pass by sub. Respectfully submitted, Senator Mullis of the 53rd District, Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Resolution 76 do pass. Senate Resolution 129 do pass. Senate Resolution 150 do pass. Senate Resolution 151 do pass. Senate Resolution 167 do pass. Senate Resolution 177 do pass. Senate Resolution 192 do pass. Senate Resolution 203 do pass. Senate Resolution 283 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Mullis of the 53rd District, Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Governmental Operations has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 284 do pass by substitute. House Bill 724 do pass. House Bill 740 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Anderson of the 24th District, Chairman. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary, will you please read bills and resolutions for the second time?
Senate Resolution 76 by Senator Jackson of the 2nd. Senate Study Committee on Employee Misclassification, create. Senate Resolution 129 by Senator Orrock of the 36th and others. Senate Retirement Security for Georgian Study Committee, create. Senate Resolution 150 by Senator Harbison of the 15th. Senate Crime and Youth Study Committee, create. Senate Resolution 151 by Senator Harbison of the 15th. Senate Sickle Cell Anemia Study Committee, create. Senate Resolution 167 by Senator Beach of the 21st and others. Taiwan, relations with the United States and the state of Georgia, commend. Senate Resolution 177 by Senator C of the 34th and others. C, Senator Valencia, recognize. Senate Resolution 192 by Senator Payne of the 54th and others, Senate Age of Mandatory Education Study Committee, create. Senate Resolution 203 by Senator Rahman of the 5th and others, Senate Outdoor Learning Study Committee, create. Senate Resolution 283 by Senator Jones II of the 22nd and others, Senate Improving Access to Healthy Foods and Ending Food Deserts Study Committee, create. This completes the order, Mr. President.
All right, it's now time for our morning roll call. It is now time for our morning roll call. We'll give everybody a minute to find their way to the chamber. Are there any motions to excuse? Kind of sit in that posture for a minute. Now time for morning roll call. All right, are there any motions to excuse? I don't see the senator from the 33rd. Somebody want to take on? Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th.
I'd like to excuse the senator from the 33rd, from the 35th, from the 38th, the 55th, the 42nd. Who else I see ain't here? 43rd.
I got him.
Anybody else? 26. Mr. President, can we just excuse roll call?
We're going to have to go through a little different process to do that.
Can we go through the process? Look like I can't keep up with who all's not here. Well, that's all right. I see. Okay, thank you, Mr. President. That's all I got for now.
Chair recognizes the majority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move we suspend the morning roll call.
The majority leader has moved that we suspend the morning roll call. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the morning roll call is suspended. All right, it's now time for a morning devotional. Ask that all senators take your seats and cease all audible conversations. Ask for our doorkeepers to secure the chamber. I'd like to recognize the majority leader to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance and to introduce to us a very special chaplain of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you would stand, do the pledge. I pledge allegiance. Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag, to the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation. Good morning. I know it's going to be a long day, so I figured we'd get her started off on the right foot here. You ever met one of those people, and the first day you met them, you feel like you've known them your entire life? Well, that's the way I feel about our pastor the day to day. I watched him at the University of West Georgia where as a student, he got a degree in accounting and one in marketing while playing football for the West Georgia Wolves out there. He was ended his career as a second-team All-American and honorable mention for the All-Decade team. So he had an accomplished football career while he was there. But the thing that was most important to him, and I watched it grow, was the strength of his faith. You know, where I made some different decisions when I was a student, our pastor today took a different route. He grew stronger in his faith and ended up leading him into the ministry after his collegiate career was over with. And then he found the love of his life, his beautiful wife, Sarah, who also shares that same passion. And so they've been with an organization called Campus Outreach for the last few years at West Georgia. And now in a few months, they are moving to Birmingham, England to take over a campus there to continue their ministry at the collegiate level. So if you would join me in welcoming our pastor of the day and my son, Bo Dugan.
Good morning, Senators. How are y'all? I was told I had an hour, right? Is that correct? Or no, a little bit shorter than that? No, it really is an honor to come and speak with you guys this morning. I'll be quick. I heard you guys got a busy day today. If you want to follow along, I'll be in Matthew. And reading from Matthew 5, verses 43 through 48. And this is Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, and he says, "You have heard that it was said, 'Love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even the pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect." The word enemy, I think a lot of the times, has kind of lost its connotation and its meaning in our context. I think it's loosely used, and so verses like this have lost their weight on us. I think when we think of enemies, we might think of like that childhood rival or classmate that always seemed to beat us in everything, or maybe our alma mater's rival. We even use words like rival or opponent and don't think about enemy because it seems too harsh. But what is an enemy? An enemy, just by definition, is a person who is actively opposed or hostile to someone or something. And in this passage, Jesus makes no question about whether we have enemies or not. He goes into it with the knowledge that we have enemies, an assumption that we know who our enemies are. And when I was thinking about coming and speaking to you guys, I thought if anybody would relate to knowing that they have enemies, I would think that you guys can relate to this, whether it's constituents or someone from across the aisle, or maybe even someone in your own party. We have enemies. And over the past few years, the political climate in our country has become more and more polarizing. But the fact of the matter that makes this passage so hard is not that it's just we have enemies, but Jesus calls us to love our enemies. And he calls us to love them perfectly. Not just love those who look like us, who act like us, who vote like us, but the very people who are hostile and opposed to us. Jesus calls us to love them and love them perfectly. Later in Matthew, Jesus goes on to say that the greatest commandment is to love the Lord God with all of our heart, soul, and mind, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. Now, as we think about that, even our neighbor who looks like us, acts like us, votes like us, we don't love them perfectly. So let alone loving our enemies perfectly. And the problem is this makes horizontal, relational enemies that we deal with. But our sin not only affects our horizontal, it affects our vertical. Because we don't love God with all of our heart, soul, and mind. And it says in Scripture that we actually are enemies of God. Now think about what the word enemy, we said it meant. It means actively opposed or hostile against. And that seems too harsh. It might seem too harsh for me to come in this Monday morning and say we are enemies of God. But all throughout Scripture, this is true. In Isaiah 53:6, it says we are like sheep who have gone astray to our own way. In Romans 3, it says no one seeks God. Ephesians 2 says that we're dead in our sin and actively seeking everything else except for God. Colossians 1 and Romans 5 both explicitly say that we are enemies of God, that we are not only too weak to get to God, but our very nature doesn't even want to. Now, this is scandalous. This is offensive. There's no way this can be true. Haven't we been good enough to get to God? Haven't we been good enough to be right with God? The truth is that we are this bad. It's actually much worse than what we could ever imagine, and that we don't love God with all our heart, soul, and mind, and we don't obey him. Romans says we can't. Our sin has caused a separation from God that we can't mend and a gap that we can't cross. So it's a lot of bad news, but the beautiful thing of the gospel and the thing that makes Christianity different from every other world religion is that it doesn't say, okay, but we must muster up enough strength, we must do enough good to get right with God. It actually starts with saying we can't do those things, but that God loves us so much that he would want to mend the gap, that he would want to cross the gap. Now just imagine with me for just 1 second the worst enemy you've ever had in your life, whether it's a childhood bully, maybe it's someone in this room. Now just imagine them. Now honestly answer the question, would you be willing to die for them? Romans 5:8 says that's exactly what Jesus does. He says, God so loved us that while we were still enemies, not while we had cleaned ourselves up and done good enough, but while we were still enemies, Christ died for us. And that he made a way for us to come to God. The love of enemies that Jesus is describing in this passage is not a passive one that sits back and says, I'll let them kind of figure it out on their own. It's not a passive one that says, those guys are idiots. They'll never figure it out on their own. I'm just going to leave them up onto their own. But it's also not an active one that says, I'm going to go rub their nose in what they've done wrong. But the active pursuit and love of Jesus that he is calling us to, but that he displayed perfectly in his life and in his death, is one that goes after and counts us as more important than himself. That although we were still enemies, or are, or currently, or have been enemies of God, and haven't perfectly loved our enemies on earth, he came to die on a cross. Think about this weekend, Easter, to die on a cross and to be raised from the dead, to restore both our relationship with God, but also to restore and redeem our relationships with men and women. And all of this can only come from turning away from ourselves, not trusting in our own abilities, turning away from our righteousness, and turning to Christ, and turning to his righteousness, and turning and trusting in what he has done on the cross. So final thought to close on, have you truly ever experienced this redemptive, transformative love of Christ? And if you have, in view of Christ's love towards you, how can you love your enemies? Because we were once enemies of God, and we might still be enemies of God if we have not trusted in him, but he was willing to die for us. So let me pray. Let's pray together. Father, the good news is only good if the bad news is true. That we are sinful enough, that we can't make our way to you, that we need you, that we need your work on the cross, your perfect life, your death that took on our wrath that we deserved, and that we were enemies of you, but now you have made us adopted children of the God and creator of the world. I pray that we could live out of that and love our enemies, love our neighbors, and love you the way, God, that you call us to. And I pray these things in your name. Amen.
Senate will come back to order. Are there any unanimous consents? The chair sees none. Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate. Senate Bill 202 requires that provisional votes cast before 5 p.m. to be thrown out. The following was written by Sabrina, a volunteer poll worker from Senate District 40. Sabrina says, I was an election day poll worker at the Dunwoody Library, which also had been an early voting site for 3 weeks prior to the election. I greeted voters at the door, checking the Secretary of State website to determine whether they were at the correct precinct. There were many, many voters who were at the wrong place. They were confused. They thought that if the Dunwoody Library was open to everyone during the early voting period, they should be able to vote there on Election Day as well. For the majority of voters, I was able to redirect them to their correct precinct, less than 3 miles away. Many, however, worked in Dunwoody, but lived in Stone Mountain or Lithonia or Decatur. They were DeKalb voters, just in the wrong precinct. They were either on a short lunch break from work or unable to make it back home to their precinct before the polls closed. Some had taken public transportation to get there. Others had worked or walked from their place of work. In each case, I asked if they were able to vote at their home precinct before 7 p.m. If they said they couldn't, I offered them the option of casting a provisional ballot. At the Dunwoody Library, we had dozens of provisional ballots cast. These are not random, she said, random disposable votes to me. I associated each one with a face, a story, a hardship. I saw the moms with toddlers tugging at them while they sat at the provisional ballot table filling out their paperwork. I saw the frail elderly voters that I pulled up chairs for so they could sit comfortably while casting their ballot on paper. I saw anxious young men looking crestfallen that despite their best efforts to get away from work and vote, their ballot might not count. I saw irate and confused middle-aged women who swore they had voted at the library precinct before. I saw naturalized citizens with limited English skills voting for the first time. These were all eligible voters who just turned up at the wrong precinct. And she says, there is no doubt in my mind that their votes must count. And this is why I, along with every member of my caucus, filed Senate Bill 314 that allows registered voters to cast their vote in any precinct within their county on Election Day. We have the technology to do this. The voting machine is capable of pulling up the voter's precise ballot so that he or she can vote for the correct candidates all the way down the ballot. There is simply no reason to throw out provisional votes cast prior to 5 p.m. As Sabrina says, these people are not disposable voters. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I want to draw your attention this morning to one of the privileged resolutions, Senate Resolution 320, the honors of life and work of Mr. Randall K. Redding. Randall was a young man that was raised in humble means. He went to Auburn University, worked in the construction industry. A lot of people have done the same thing, but it's Randall's life as an adult that sets him apart. He was an early follower of Jesus Christ. He started RK Rating Construction Company and was a leader in the construction field. He was in business for himself over 30 years. He was very active in the Associated General Contractors. Randall was also very involved in his community. His generosity is unsurpassed. I worked with Randall in the workforce development programs, and he was very influential in the adoption of the student aptitude testing that we put in place several years ago. Not only that, Randall was a very, very strongly devoted family man, husband, father, grandfather. He was truly a Southern gentleman, and he was one of the kindest, most caring people I've ever known. And it's my privilege and pleasure today to honor the life and incredible work of Randall K. Redding. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. As we concluded our business here in the Senate on last week, our final day, I learned with great shock that yet again, a colleague of ours, an elected official, here doing the business of the General Assembly, here in the building with the legislature in session, was locked up, was put in wrist ties, and taken out of the building, put in a patrol car of the Georgia State Patrol, and taken downtown and booked. And charged with felonies. And anybody who cares to look can see quite clearly what was the onerous sin of Park Cannon. I'm here today to stand for Park Cannon, to stand for State Representative Park Cannon, and to deplore the treatment that she received at the hands of the Georgia State Troopers. Hope you've seen the video. The rest of the world has seen it. Georgia has made news again. At the very moment of signing Senate Bill 202, which inarguably limits access to the ballot in Georgia, and deliberately does so, at that very time that news is sweeping across the land, a state representative, a young African-American woman, a leader in her community, elected in landslide elections, known for her fortitude, her straightforwardness, her courage, her ability to speak truth to power, and her willingness to do that. Did you see the video that the rest of the world saw? She tapped on the door of the governor's office where the signing of the bill was taking place, with none of the public there, 3 hand-picked legislators from each side of the chamber. She tapped on that door. It was such a delicate tap. She put some hand sanitizer on. She spoke with a policeman. That's right. It was delicate. It was delicate. And I'll tell you what, it's not the first time it's happened, because I deplored what happened to Nikema Williams. When you seize black female legislators and lock them up and charge them with felonies, it's like going back so far in time. It's the old South writ large, in my opinion. And if you don't speak up when something like this happens, I don't know what to say for us. It is. I know a white guy that waved a gun in the well of the house. Did they lock him up? No, they did not. I'm going to take my seat, but I just want to remind us: you can't ignore this. You can't act like it didn't happen, because it did happen, and it's known now worldwide. I support Representative Park Cannon. You know, the last time when they locked up Senator Nikema Williams,
The
she's
senator's
in Congress
time in the
now.
well has expired.
Nikema's in Congress now. Where will Park Cannon be? Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 29th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I remember as a child, the only time I had the opportunity to watch cartoons was on Saturday morning. I guess it was because I was born in 1962, where now there's channels that play them 24 hours a day. So what we saw once again this past week was an elected official putting their goals, their opportunities to be shown by media that fully 100% supports their narrative, put them out there. Everybody saw the video that the colleague of the colleague who was arrested put out there. Sadly, what they didn't see were the 9 warnings. Sadly, what they didn't see where she went to the governor's office prior to that, banging on the door. They didn't see all that. They didn't see what happened in the room while she was beating on the door, because this was not meant to be seen. This is all publicity. This isn't about addressing poverty. This isn't about addressing voters' rights. This isn't about addressing anything. This is about somebody inside this building making themselves more important than anybody else. They didn't show her stomping with the heel of her shoe on the foot of a Georgia State trooper. They didn't show that. And I'm going to tell you, it's time for us to stand up, stand behind the men and women that protect us each and every day in this building, and stand up for conservative values and not be too afraid to speak out when we're done wrong. Because as I said when this session started, truth matters. And if the truth is on your side, then speak the truth. Speak the truth to those who try to hijack this system. Speak the truth to those that when you solve their problem, they vote against you because you have taken their soapbox away. Friends, speak the truth each and every day up here. Fear nothing. Courage is not stupidity. Courage is knowing that things are going to be against you, that the room is full of smoke, or that there's a guy behind the door with a gun, and with that knowledge, you go through that door or you go into that burning building anyway, knowing that you may not come out. That is courage. And what we're in right now calls for men and women of courage. I look on my driver's license and I'm an organ donor. And I told people this before, but I cannot donate backbone. Stand up with the 33 you were born with that should be about 24 by now, flexible, and speak truth and display courage. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. This past Friday, I had the sad honor of attending the funeral of Ms. Xiaojie Tan, who was a successful business owner who was murdered in the mass shooting that took place on Tuesday, March 16th. Ms. Tan was the embodiment of the American dream. She was an immigrant who worked and strove, and she saved and parlayed her sweat and talent into a thriving business before she was gunned down days before her 50th birthday in the spa she owned just outside Atlanta. And here I quote with permission from the eulogy that her husband, Mike, delivered at her funeral. Quote, "So, how about all of us? Sadly, Xiaojie's family in China wishes for her daughter, Jamie, a proud American citizen, to return to China because they think it is just not safe here anymore. This is the kind of example our country is setting for the rest of the world." The other morning, after the second massacre here in the United States, he's referring to the mass shooting in Colorado, in less than a week, the news person pointed out that we have not had a mass shooting in our country for a while due to the pandemic. Do we really have to quarantine ourselves to avoid being gunned down in the grocery store, our schools, our businesses, and our places of worship? Must our flags always fly at half-mast? We, as a country, should be ashamed. End quote. In the Georgia State Senate today, we're looking to push through a bill, HB 218, which makes it easier to buy and carry firearms in the state, only a week and a half after the mass shooting which took Xiaojie's life, along with the life of 7 other innocent victims. Gun safety should not be a partisan issue. Gun safety is a public health issue. Imagine a different public health risk which affected 300 people per day. Imagine that public health risk affected 3,600 children and teens annually. Imagine that public health risk had a 30% fatality rate. And imagine year after year after year doing nothing about it. But we don't really have to imagine this, do we? Because this is how we regard the epidemic of gun violence in America. So no large public health issue has just one cause or one manifestation or one easy fix, but we do owe it to our communities to start trying. So what I would like to see is support of common sense gun safety measures. There are 2 that have been proposed in the Georgia State Legislature this past year. The first one is universal background checks, and the second one is to propose a 5-day waiting period on all firearm transfers. Gun violence in America is certainly not new, but what is new is how we can move forward from this. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 9th for a point of personal privilege.
Good morning. I just want to respond to what has been said today in regards to Representative Cannon being arrested. I think what happened on Thursday was a disgrace. I think that that bill was signed behind closed doors for a reason, under a racist painting, by the way, that many didn't know until after, and everybody started analyzing the picture. All you had was a representative, an elected official, going up, knocking on the door of another elected official to ask a question about your lack of transparency with signing this bill. How I understand it, tradition is for him to sign bills publicly. But the fact that it was done undercover, behind closed doors, tells me that there was shame about this bill, that you knew it was going to be a problem. You know, we're disenfranchising voters, and if you don't like being called a racist or Jim Crow, then stop acting like one. Stop passing bills and legislation that furthers that narrative. Some of you are going to pay dearly with your seats for putting your name on HB 202. And I take great offense that part of my bill was ripped to put into that bill, and I did not agree. I went in good faith for a positive bill, but it's fine. Y'all want to perfect your legislation and cobble that all together, that's fine. Matter of fact, I would have just given it to you. I didn't even need my name on it if I knew that was what's going to happen, but you're well within your rights to do that as the majority. I get it. You know, we like to talk about how we foster in here, don't take it all personal. You know, what we do in the chamber, don't take it personal. And we're supposed to be friends at the end of the day when you're ripping voting rights from my constituents. When you do things not in good faith, when you sign bills undercover and arrest a black woman that was just simply there to ask a question. I think the officer was out of line. I saw the video. I didn't see where she went, where she did anything wrong. It would be the same as me going up and knocking on any one of your doors, asking a question. Am I gonna get arrested for it? So I stand with Representative Cannon on this. I feel ashamed to be in the state of Georgia. I'm getting calls from relatives and friends asking me, is this a reality in Georgia? Is this really what is happening right now? Are you guys actually passing legislation that puts us back? And we are, and it's disgraceful. With that, I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 24th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today is the Augusta Greater Day, the great day for Augusta, Georgia, and we just want to thank the Chamber in Augusta and also the Chamber in Columbia County for helping us present this gift to y'all. Y'all know that in a few days, everyone can come to Augusta, bring your wallet, bring your money, spend it all, and enjoy a great event, the Masters. We just hope you enjoy wearing the hat and wear it with pride, and thank y'all.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 13th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, the moment mass shootings start up in America is the moment we all of a sudden hear from our Democrat colleagues, gun control, gun control, gun control, gun control. We don't hear anything about mental illness. We don't hear anything about deranged people who are just full of hate that would kill with any weapon available, whether it's a pressure cooker, whether it's a knife, whether it's a dadgum truck running over people in a crowd, no matter what it is, hate will find a way. Hate will find a way. In my opinion, gun safety should be taught in every school. You'd probably have a lot less issues if gun control was taught in every school. You know, the gun control issue was settled in 1791. We settled that issue about gun control. You know, making good people helpless won't make bad people harmless. And that's something we need to remember. The mass shootings are simply a sign of mental illness and pure hatred. And I implore you not to go down that road of gun control, gun control, gun control. All it's going to do is make this side swell up and this side swell up, and you're never going to reach a sensible legislation that could even work if you had one. The bottom line of it is if gun controls were taken away, people will still find a way to kill and be hateful and do what they do. It was a hate crime, not a gun crime. Let's don't go down the gun control road. I implore you, please, colleagues. Mr. President, I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the majority leader for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to start by saying I love my enemy. Increasing the number of days eligible to vote and codifying it is not Jim Crow. Codifying drop boxes for the first time in our state's history and allowing them to persist is not Jim Crow. Letting people distribute food and water as long as they are 25 feet away from the line is not Jim Crow. Saying the mistruth over and over and over again about photo IDs being a requirement when you know darn well, and some of y'all were people that were in the committee where it was specifically said that is not a requirement, but when you say that, that is not only misleading, it is a lie to our constituency. This is not Jim Crow. Nobody is getting lynched for going to vote. Matter of fact, we don't want 60% to vote. We want 100%. And we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that if just because somebody's signature has changed or somebody's mother has developed some kind of a twitch in her hand and her looks different, that she's not prevented. We're not going to stand by and let the number of ballots that are consistently disregarded in the mail-in ballot process because of a lack of a signature match stops. That's not Jim Crow. That's increasing. Stop with the rhetoric. Park did not tap on the door. This was not, Mr. Governor, do you have a second to talk? She got it what she was looking for. She wanted to make a scene and be arrested. I'm not mad at her. That's her right as an individual. But don't make her a martyr when she got what she went down there to do. There's more than one video. So don't stick with just the one. Look at the other one as well. We're going to have differences. I understand that this is going to be a political issue that is going to be used to drive a wedge. I got it. Let no issue go to waste. I got it. But when you call somebody racist long enough, when you know it's not, when it actually happens, it's going to be like the boy who cried wolf, and nobody's going to hear you. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 26th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I hadn't intended to come down here, but I keep hearing all this malarkey. First of all, you know the lie was told by Trump. And y'all are falling into it, talking about the elections. Your own Secretary of State said that the elections were fair and right. And what you got mad about is he recorded Trump trying to make him change it. Because if he hadn't recorded it, Trump would have lied on him too. So let's get it straight. We got our differences. You don't like what happened in the election results. We do. And we're going to keep pushing forward. And as I told you the last time, it's going to be a fight. You asking for it, you're going to get a fight. Don't get mad. Since you made the decision to do what you did with 202, don't get mad. I told you from the beginning we were going to fight. And just as soon as the governor signed it, we filed the suit. We're going to fight about elections in Georgia. We're going to fight about fair elections in Georgia. When you look at 202, you got mad with the Secretary of State. You're going to take his powers away now. That's what 202 does. So don't get up here and try to make a scam out of something. You did it. You voted for it. Now you got to live with it. But I'm telling you, we're going to be in court all year long. So don't get mad. Let's move on and do the other things we need to do. But we're going to fight. There ain't no question about it. We're going to fight.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 28th for a point of personal privilege, and Chair would personally like to thank you for your hard work over the last few days in your district. We've all paid attention and watched the devastation from the storms, and really appreciate the continued updates, and Chair would like to recognize you for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not down here, colleagues. I don't want to talk about Senate Bill 202. I don't want to talk about elections. I don't want to talk about guns. I want to talk about people. I want to talk about real people. And I'm emotional today because I know that reality is setting in today for thousands of people that have lost their homes, they've lost their valuables, they've lost pieces of their lives. And I came in on one of the initial chopper rides riding in, I was asked by GEMA to ride along. They needed someone local that could identify streets. And we went to the high school. It's kind of where we knew the damage was most severe. We knew it was west of there and east of there, but didn't really know to what extent. And I remember riding in, and I saw it, and I got chills. And I looked down, and it was hard to recognize streets because they didn't look the same. And then the emotion set in because those homes were my friends' homes. People we go to church with, people I went to school with, real people, people that I now represent. Didn't see any political signs, except for those that were used to patch roofs and board up windows to keep the rain from coming out later that night. I do want to thank the governor. He immediately called a state of emergency at 2 a.m. in the morning on Friday morning. And with that, state resources came in from GEMA, DNR, Georgia Forestry, State Patrol, GDOT, all went to work right away clearing our roads so that we could get in. And just to give you an idea of the devastation, this thing hit in Franklin, Georgia, in Heard County, destroying many homes, destroying property, and then picked back up on the west side of Noonan, Georgia, just west of Noonan High School, where I graduated. 6 miles long, about 3/4 of a mile wide at its most wide point, about a half mile wide for the rest of the way. And you looked around, no trees, homes. Home's gone. And by the grace of God, we only had one death. And it was a heart attack. They couldn't get to him in time. We only had 10 people in the hospital, 9 of which were released within several hours. Real people. And then the work began. We saw linemen coming in from all over the state to restore power, to get trees off of power lines. We saw tree crews getting trees off houses, out of yards. Volunteer organization and churches. Thank you. Volunteer organizations and churches from the community, from our state, from all over the Southeast, along with private companies, local restaurants, large and small, all stepping up to do what they could, delivering food, delivering supplies. And then we saw citizens from all over our community. We saw kids from rival high schools showing up to help out their fellow students, help out their fellow families. That's what it's about to be a Georgian. It's coming together in a time of crisis and helping out our fellow neighbors. The senator from the 12th standing beside me called me on Friday, and many of y'all called me as well. But I know the senator from the 12th had already been through this as we saw Hurricane Michael rip through southwest Georgia. And she gave me advice on what to do as a legislator and how to use my skills to help my community, and that's what I tried to do. Tried to stay out of the way, number one, but also jump in where I could to help. And I hope I was a help. And we got a long way to go. And so, members, I'm going to ask for your help. There's things that we can do to, we we sent money to Southwest Georgia, and I'm going to ask for the same. I'll be working with the governor's office on seeking whatever help we can. Whether it's $1 or millions of dollars, we're going to take whatever we can get. And I'll ask for your moral support, may ask for a little financial support, but most of all, I ask for your prayers. These people need it. So with that, I'll ask that we have a moment of silence for all those that lost something.
Senators asked us to rise and offer a moment of silence.
And I ask that you keep in mind the many men and women that are coming to our aid, that are coming to our help, that they stay safe. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members of this body, for all that you do for this great state. Thank you for all the love. We know we're loved in Coweta County. And I want y'all to know that we love each other. And if you want to witness it, you come see it. Thank you. I yield the well.
You've got a consent calendar of privileged resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? The chair sees none. Is there objection or adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? Chair sees none. You have a consent calendar of local bills before you. Mr. Secretary, are there any objections filed to any bill on the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, there are no objections filed.
Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the Committee on State and Local Government, which is favorable to the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar? Chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. The question is on the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? A couple more coming. Have all senators voted? Hallway looks clear. Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0. And the bills, having received the requisite constitutional majority, are therefore passed. Chair recognizes the majority leader for a motion.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the following bills be engrossed. House Bill 32, House Bill 282, House Bill 317, House Bill 477, House Bill 517, House Bill 587.
The majority leader has asked for unanimous consent for House Bills 32, 282, 317, 477, 517, and 587 to be engrossed. Is there objection? There is objection. Majority leader waives. Would the minority leader like to speak to her objection? She waives. All those in favor of engrossing the previously mentioned bills, vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Have all senators voted? Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the motion, the yeas are 36 and the nays are 16. And House Bills 32, 282, 317, 477, 517, 587 have been engrossed. We're now going to move on to the rules calendar. For what purpose does the senator from the 43rd rise?
I ask for unanimous, I'm sorry, parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 39th.
Without objection, the senator from the 39th is excused. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 509?
House Bill 509 by Representative Gaines of the 117th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 30 of Title 33 of the OCGA relating to general provisions relative to group or blanket accident or sickness insurance so as to require certain insurers to make at least one reasonably priced comprehensive major medical health insurance policy available to residents in this state without limitation or exclusion based on pre-existing conditions and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Burke of the 11th, Chairman. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 17th to speak to House Bill 509.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I bring to you House Bill 509. While we continue to see debate nationally and also litigation in our court system over the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act of 2010, with House Bill 509, we're drawing the line in the sand. And we're saying that no matter what happens with that act, we're going to make sure that in Georgia we have affordable, comprehensive medical insurance policies. And these policies will include coverage for pre-existing medical conditions. While our friends in D.C. continue to argue about how best to address access to care on a federal level, we in Georgia will know our citizens can at least count on these basic protections. With that, Mr. President, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
You have no questions.
Ask for favorable consideration.
Any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 509? The chair sees none. Is there objection agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill? All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine.
Okay, this next bill has an amendment and a substitute. Your favor. Uninsured motorist coverage.
Have all senators voted, including the senator from the 37th? Who's deep in thought? Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 714?
House Bill 714 by Representative Kelly of the 16th, A bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 8 of Chapter 11 of Title 9 of the OCGA relating to provisional and final remedies and special proceedings so as to revise and provide for new requirements under Georgia Civil Practice Act for settlement offers and arrangements for tort claims for personal injury, bodily injury, and death, to amend Chapter 7 of Title 33 of the OCGA relating to kinds of insurance, limits of risk, and reinsurance so as to revise the liability of an insurer upon refusal to pay for an uninsured for any loss pursuant to uninsured motorist coverage and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Burke of the 11th. Chairman. Insurance and Labor offers the following substitute to House Bill 714, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 8 of Chapter 11 of Title 9 of the OCGA relating to provisional and final remedies and special proceedings so as to provide and provide for new requirements under the Georgia Civil Practice Act for settlement offers and arrangement for tort claims for personal injury and for other purposes. Senator Perrin of the 42nd and others offer the following Amendment 1 to amend the substitute to House Bill 714 by replacing line 8 with the following. Policies to revise a penalty to amend an act known as the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority Act of 1965, approved March 10, 1965, as amended so as to provide for revenue for actions against the authority or relative to revenue bonds, to provide for related matters, to provide for applicability, and for other purposes. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 18th to speak to the measure and the amendment that he's co-signed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I bring to you House Bill 714. This may look and sound a bit familiar because it's something we've actually worked on for the last couple of years, and I'm very pleased to tell you that all the stakeholders that we've been working with and that I personally have been working with for the last 2 years are in agreement with what is being presented to you today. This really builds on a 2013 agreement between the insurance community and the GTLA, the trial lawyers, on the rules of the road for settling automobile claims. Both the insurance community and the GTLA stated in committee that they agree with the contents of this bill, which simply just clarifies material terms that are set out in OCG 91167.1 as the only material terms that can be included in an offer to settle. Those material terms are set out in the bill. These will continue to be the rules of the road. It also requires sufficient medical records in the offeror's possession and incurred as a result of the injury that are sufficient to allow an evaluation of the claim to be included with the demand. The bill also allows a claimant to require an insurance company receiving a claim be provided a statement regarding the disclosure of liability and casualty insurance issued by that particular company. Finally, you'll see in the last section of the bill that it includes an expansion of the penalties for uninsured motorist bad faith claims against an insurance company. The current law is that it's 25% of the recovery is the maximum amount of the penalty. This takes it up to that or $25,000, whichever amount is greater. The parties are still free to settle their claims in any manner they see fit in the existing statute, and this bill are only to prevent the gotcha moments that you probably heard us talking about last year, that you may have heard about in committee. It doesn't impact or diminish the ability to bring a bad faith failure to settle claims in appropriate circumstances. So I offer that for your consideration. There is an amendment, and I will speak briefly. It may be that the senator from the 42nd wishes to speak as well. I'm fine with the amendment. It simply allows and adds the State Court of Fulton County in addition to the currently designated Superior Court of Fulton County to be able to hold hearings with regard to the issuance of bonds under the subject act. So with that, Mr. President, I'll be happy to answer any questions or yield the well. I know
Chair recognizes the senator from the 26th with a question.
Gentleman, you. This is Senator you.
Oh, yes, sir. Sorry.
So this does not have in it where you had to have two jury trials to separate the issues.
No, sir, Senator, that is not in this bill. That has nothing to do with 714.
Okay.
You have no more questions.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your support.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd to speak to her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the senator from the 18th said, the amendment is something requested by the MARTA Oversight Committee. And it simply allows litigants to file claims in state court in addition to superior court, which is already permitted, where the calendars move more quickly. And it so happens as well that claims are not infrequently filed in the wrong court. So then there's the hassle from the judges to move the claims over to the right court, which delays the hearing of the matter. So I'm happy to answer any questions about this or yield the well.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for your favorable consideration on Amendment 1 and the bill. Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 714 or Amendment number 1? The chair sees none. We'll first take up Amendment number 1. Is there objection to adoption of Amendment number 1? The chair hears none, and Amendment number 1 is adopted. Now the questions on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee sub as amended? Chair hears none. The committee substitute as amended is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary, will you please read the caption of House Bill 307?
House Bill 307 by Representative Cooper of the 43rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 24 of Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance generally so as to revise the Georgia Telehealth Act, to revise definitions, to authorize healthcare providers to provide telemedicine services from home and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson of the 1st, Chairman. Health and Human Services offers the following substitute to House Bill 307, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 24 of Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance generally so as to revise the Georgia Telehealth Act, to revise definitions, to authorize healthcare providers to provide telemedicine services from home and for other purposes. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd to speak to House Bill 307.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 307 is about telehealth. We've got a pretty robust telemedicine law, but this is going to help people that are having mental health issues. And you have a letter on your desk from the Georgia Chamber that supports the bill. Today, as a result of the pandemic, we have a serious mental health crisis. We're seeing a rise in depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and suicide. This bill is about ensuring easier access for our most vulnerable citizens to mental and behavioral health services. And this will help some of our most vulnerable citizens not be left out in the cold. House Bill 307 proposes a limited and tailored extension of insurance coverage that provides parity for mental and behavioral health care delivered by phone or telehealth and specific services, and it allows providers to render services from their homes and for Georgians to receive care when in their homes, schools, or workplace. This ensures that licensed mental health professionals are only a phone call away for many of our citizens with mental health issues. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I'd appreciate your favorable consideration.
You have no questions.
Thank you. I yield the will.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 307? The chair sees none. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 635?
House Bill 635 by Representatives Leverett of the 33rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 15 of the OCGA relating to courts so as to provide that each judge of the Superior Court, State Court, and Probate Court and each magistrate shall have authority to perform any lawful judicial act regardless of whether he or she is physically located at the time of such an act, to amend Title 17 of the OCGA relating to criminal procedure so as to provide for the issuance of arrest warrants by a judge regardless of where such judge is physically located, and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 17th, Chairman. Senate Judiciary offers the following substitute to House Bill 635. A bill to be entitled an act to revise certain procedural and administrative matters of the courts, to amend Title 15 and Article 1 of Chapter 32 of Title 36 of the OCGA, relating to courts and general provisions regarding municipal courts, respectively, so as to provide that each judge of the Superior Court, State Court, Probate Court, and Municipal Court, and each magistrate shall have authority to perform any lawful judicial act regardless of where he or she is physically located, and for other purposes. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 17th to present House Bill 635.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I bring to you House Bill 635. This bill is once again an effort to try to make sure we can get our criminal cases moving in our state and our court system. The Senate Judiciary Committee combined several recommendations from our judicial council for accomplishing this goal in this bill. Part 1 allows our judges to perform acts they can already legally, lawfully perform regardless of where they are location-wise. Part 2 allows our counties to select a different location for court where the current facilities are not practical. In Part 3, which has a sunset for next June 30th, 2022, allows the defendant to request a bench trial versus a jury trial in all cases except death penalty and serious violent felonies. Finally, Section 4, which is also sunsetted for next June, allows for cases to move forward by accusation versus going through the grand jury process for cases other than serious violent felonies. With that, Mr. President, I'm happy to answer any questions.
You have no questions.
I ask for your vote yes on House Bill 635.
Any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 635? The chair sees none. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Have all senators voted? Hallway clear. Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 539?
House Bill 539 by Representative Cooper of the 43rd, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 34 of Title 43 of the OCGA relating to the Medical Practice Act of the State of Georgia so as to revise provisions relating to institutional licenses and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson I, Chairman. Senate Health and Human Services offers the following substitute to House Bill 539. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 11 of Title 9 of the OCGA relating to the Georgia Civil Practice Act so as to provide for separate trials for issues of liability and damages and actions for medical malpractice and for other purposes. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 11th to speak to House Bill 539.
Thank you, Mr. President. I bring to you House Bill 539, and I want to explain how I interpret this bill with a little story. As most of you know, I practiced obstetrics in rural Georgia for almost 30 years. And frequently we were called to the hospital in the middle of the night to take care of people who didn't get any prenatal care. And just imagine this scenario. You've got a mom that's 26 weeks pregnant and she comes in hemorrhaging. They call me, we come in, and we do an emergency C-section. The baby's life is saved and the mama's life is saved. But fast forward 5 years, those babies are in a wheelchair because of sepsis. They're blind because they got too much oxygen during their newborn period. They have a colostomy because they got necrotizing enterocolitis in the NICU. And so they bring suit against the doctor who came in and delivered those babies that had no prenatal care. And those damages to those babies that was significant, severe, and lifelong is the basis for a huge judgment, even though that physician did nothing wrong in the care of that baby. That's what this bill is all about, is fairness to the physician, making sure they're on an even playing field when it comes to the legal system. This is about bifurcation and the ability of those emotional facts to be dealt with in the second phase of a single trial, and the judge does have the ability to consolidate the trial if the facts suggest that he should. That's what this bill is about. Appreciate your favorable support. and this senator yields the well.
Senator has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 539? Chair recognizes the senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did not plan to speak for or against this bill, but I wanted to ask a couple questions of the author in the well. And so instead, I'll just point it out up here now, and I'll take questions. Anybody has questions for me? House Bill 539 is not House Bill 539. It is a bill that was created by the Committee of Health and Human Services, and what they took was Senate Bill 189. Senate Bill 189 currently sits in the Judiciary Committee that I chair in this body. That bill came before that committee for a hearing, and the bill failed. It was a different version. This version actually goes a little bit further than the version they brought before that committee, but they did not get the vote they wanted in that committee, so instead it reappears from another committee. And that's fine. That's how this process works. But what's important that you should know is this bill has not been vetted by our Judiciary Committee. This bill is not something that those that were put on that committee were given a chance to work through. The bill would still live for another year for that committee. We continue to work on this. And I'm sure some of y'all could probably point out some of the problems legally with this bill, but I'll also just go ahead and say this. If you look on lines 17 through 20, you will see that under current Georgia law, anybody in any case can request to have a trial bifurcated. There's already a process set up where someone can do that. What you have with this bill is a special exception. Just medical malpractice cases are going to be bifurcated automatically by law unless you meet this other standard set forth, lines 21 through 26. This is one group that gets special treatment under our law, got that by bypassing a committee that had the bill be considered. And so I can make arguments against the actual law itself, but also like to point out that procedure is important. And so if you have any doubt about this, give us a chance to work on this for another year in Judiciary Committee. Happy to take any questions.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 21st for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Yes, sir.
Is it not true that physicians prevail 92% of the time in medical negligence cases here in Georgia?
I truly don't know, and I do not practice in the area of medical malpractice. I actually don't even do the trial work that a lot of folks do as far as personal injury cases. I have one or two of those I've ever even tried in my life. I do more of a general practice. I don't know the answer to that question. If you say it's true, it probably is.
Well, I've been told that.
Okay.
Further yield?
Yes, sir.
I'm not an attorney, but is it not true that under existing Georgia law, our elected judges have the discretion to order any trial to be bifurcated at this point now?
Yes, sir. And anybody can look at that on lines 17 through 20 of the current law. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you continue to yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes the minority whip, senator from the 22nd, for a question.
Senator Yield.
Yes, sir.
Just to reiterate, is it not true that this bill actually does a special carve out for just one area of the particular law and that it won't apply anywhere else? This shell provision that exists?
That's true.
All right. Thank you, Senator.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 26th for a question. He's been busy today.
I'm doing my job. With Senator Yield.
Yes, sir.
Senator, isn't it true that when you talk about this bill, and you're talking about delivering babies, that if we do Medicaid expansion, we will have money to see about a lot of these folks who the doctor is talking about?
That may be true, Senator. This bill, of course, has nothing to do with that, but that may be one argument to make. Yeah. And of course, I didn't talk about any babies, but I learned that when you want to build a pass, you start talking about children first versus actually talking about the bill itself, and people just automatically vote yes sometimes, I guess.
Do you continue to yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd for a question.
Does the chairman yield?
To my sweet mate and the doctor on judiciary.
Your sweet mate?
The sweet mate. Yes, ma'am.
Isn't it true that we have a shortage of obstetricians and other primary care physicians in rural Georgia?
I've heard that time and time again. Yes, ma'am.
And isn't it also true that in judiciary we heard testimony that when North Carolina did this, 10 years ago that the malpractice rates for their obstetricians went down by 30%?
They did argue that, but there's no way to know for sure if it came from this. It's also important to note that Georgia has a different set of laws when it comes to damages for trials than North Carolina has. We have apportionment laws, and that's one of the legal issues that we have with this bill, if we're going to still consider it, is the bill was not drawn where it's consistent with our apportionment law that we have now, which requires you to consider damages at the phase of trial initially. So you have a conflict there that has to be decided as to how this can even be applied. North Carolina does not have apportionment law.
You have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr.
Does
President.
any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair sees none. Chair recognizes the senator from the 11th to close debate on House Bill 539.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the fact that this is a body that allows debate. I appreciate the fact that the trial attorneys got their 2 cents in, and that's the way it should be. But, you know, this bill, as I said in the beginning, is about fairness. North Carolina is a state that's similar to our state from the standpoint of its demographics. It's supposed to be business friendly, and frankly, it's eating our lunch when it comes to medical malpractice. As was mentioned by the senator from the 32nd, medical malpractice insurance is a huge overhead cost to physicians in rural Georgia and for the hospitals that employ them. I have to write that check every year for the medical malpractice for the providers that work in our hospital. And these are great doctors that do a great job and are treating people in rural Georgia. Certainly something they're not being compensated for like they would if they were practicing in metro areas. So I would appreciate your not letting this be a trial lawyer bill, but let this be a physician-friendly bill. Thank you. I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well and closed debate. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Have all senators voted? Hallway clear. Double thumbs up. Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 17, the nays are 33, and this bill has failed to receive the constitutional majority. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 371?
House Bill 371 by Representative Gunter of the 8th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 24-13-60 of the OCGA relating to order requiring prisoner's delivery to serve as witness or criminal defendant generally, expenses in prisoner under death sentence as witness, so as to provide that certain proceedings may be conducted by video conference, to provide for requirements for such proceedings, to authorize judges to order a prisoner's appearance in court, to provide that the attorney-client privilege shall be preserved, to provide for the maintenance of certain records, and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 17th, Chairman. Senate Judiciary offers the following substitute to House Bill 371, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 13 of Title 24 of the OCJ relating to general provisions regarding securing attendance of witnesses and production and preservation of evidence so as to provide that certain proceedings may be conducted by video conference and for other purposes. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the Rules Chairman to present House Bill 371. For what purpose does the senator from the 53rd rise?
Mr. President, with visions from above, vibes from within, and to perfect this bill during this session, I move that the Senate table House Bill 371.
Very eloquently, the senator from the 53rd has asked that the Senate table House Bill 371. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and House Bill 371 is placed on the table. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption to House Bill 67?
House Bill 67 by Representatives Martin of the 49th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 16 of Title 50 of the OCJ relating to general provisions relative to public property so as to extend automatic repeals of certain provisions and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Higher Education recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Tippins of the 37th, Chairman. The Senate Committee on Rules offers the following substitute to House Bill 67, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 16 of Title 50 of the OCJ relating to general provisions relative to public property so as to extend automatic repeals of certain provisions regarding writing off small amounts due to the state and for other purposes. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 46th to present House Bill 67.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this may sound a bit familiar. We presented this bill, the Senate version of it's the non-lapsing revenue or tuition carry-forward bill for the University System of Georgia. 4 crossover day, it passed here overwhelmingly. Well, actually, I'm wrong. It didn't pass here because of some concerns in the Higher Education Committee. It passed the House and came over, and we vetted it very closely with our Higher Ed Committee. We've got 3 different types of revenue this deals with, and the whole bill is just extending a sunset on a provision in law we've had for some time now. When kids pay tuition and different type of technology fees and activity fees in the university system, sometimes it carries over past our fiscal year, which ends, of course, at the end of June. And we had a provision that up to 3% of tuition they could retain and not have to lapse back to the state government to apply it to the next year's tuition, et cetera. As it was being vetted in our Higher Ed Committee, we discovered that there are some relatively large account balances of these non-lapsed funds that have accumulated over the years, and they're used for a variety of reasons by the university system. So what the changes made to the bill was it does extend that sunset for 5 years as requested, but we have added some reporting requirements on the university system to let us know how much money is there, what it's being used for, and what the total balance are. If you'll look just at the very end on lines 91 through 97, it puts in these reporting requirements, the same thing from line 76 to 82. So essentially, we're asking them to give us a report each year of all non-lapsing revenue provided for from the preceding fiscal year, what the anticipated plans are for the use of these accumulated non-lapsing revenue funds, the actual expenses that they have paid during the previous year, and also what the cumulative balances are of these different funds.
On the tuition fund, we found that it generally gets spent immediately just once the next school year begins. But some of the activity fees and technology fees have accumulated some balances that have some good uses. We're just trying to get to the bottom of it and find out exactly how much has been accumulated and what are the funds being used for. So I think it's a good compromise that came out of a Rules Committee sub. The main change from the Rules Committee sub and the Higher Ed sub is to require a little bit more reporting and to extend that sunset for the full 5 years requested. So with that, Mr. President, if there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
You have a question. Chair recognizes the senator from the 21st.
Thank you,
to your
Mr.
right.
President. Can you touch a little bit on this reporting? Is this to the Board of Regents or is it to the Higher Ed committees of the Senate and the House?
Okay, if you'll look here on, this is on the Rules Committee sub. If you look starting at line 76, it goes to the governor and the chairperson of the House Committee on Appropriations, the chairperson of the Senate Appropriations Committee, to let them know what's being used. It does not go to the higher ed committees.
Okay.
And this is for technical colleges as well as the University System of Georgia.
Could you expand, further yield?
I'll be happy to.
Could you expand on why we went from 1 year to 5 years? What's the reasoning behind that? I
Sort
know there's
of,
going to be reporting, but
that's what it's done in the past, is go in 5-year periods. And of course, that's Senate Finance Committee in particular likes things to sunset in 5 years to be reviewed. But other than that, I don't have any that was not at my direction or request. Just give a little
Senator,
certainty.
we're
Be glad to
talking
yield.
about a large sum of money here. I've been
Yes.
told somewhere in the $700 million range.
When you look at the accumulative of all the 31 or 33 institutions that we have in the state, the total is over $700 million that is accumulated in these fund balances. I don't know how quickly it's spent, but we're hoping to get to the bottom of that with this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
You have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I've got grave concern about the changes that were made to this bill. I'm not saying anything's wrong. I'm not saying anything's right. I'm saying that about a month ago it came to my attention in Senate Bill 109. We were asked to give a 5-year extension to the sunset clause on the retained funds. I believe this is a special consideration that we have to take we have to consider, because constitutionally we're not supposed to accrue fund balances at the end of a fiscal year. They're supposed to return to the Treasury. This statute was put in place to avoid the rush end of the year spending, maybe many times needlessly. I understand that fully. When it came to my attention and many in the Senate that the fund balance on these funds had grown to $735 million, almost $750 million by the end of FY 2020, and that it was over a $300 million increase over the prior 6 years. It's concerning that there's not a published list of plans for these funds. I'm not opposed to having operating reserves. I understand that as a business owner. I'm not opposed even to these funds being used for the purpose of the institutions. But quite often you'll see us approve capital construction projects, and it shows that local funds being raised are being raised. Quite often it's not local funds coming from the community. It's funds that have been retained from student fees and student services, and also cost recoveries. The reason in committee we had asked for a 1-year extension of this statute instead of a 5, because we wanted to study it over a year's time. We mandated that all the information would be available. the Office of Planning and Budget be available to the House Budget Committee and the Senate Budget Committee. And we, in an effort to have total and complete transparency, this bill did not seek to cap the amount of funds that could be retained. It only asked that those funds be accounted for in the logical planning of future expenditures, and it would be a very transparent process. I've been told that it's pretty hard to get information as to how these funds both are generated and how they're spent. The biggest single fund source of this is in cost recoveries. And in many of these cost recoveries, especially in our research universities, they conduct research that is in turn sold to the private sector. And the funds for that comes back in goes into these funds. These funds are retained by the university, but many times much of the cost associated with the generation of that work product that's sold to outside entities is paid for through the general budget. I feel like transparency is the best way to approach this. I've not prepared an amendment, but I really felt like the original language in the Senate committee substitute looked after the financial interest of the state of Georgia. I found out Friday after the fact that this was being changed in rules and I was not in rules. That's my problem. I don't have any problem with the universities going forward, but I truly believe that we need transparency. $750 million is a lot of money, and I think we need to have a very clear plan from the inception as to how these funds are going to be used. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 67? The chair sees none. For what purpose does the pro tem rise? Chair recognizes the pro tem to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to thank the gentleman from Cobb County for his diligence and hard work on this bill, and to thank the gentleman from the 21st for his questions on this bill. These are all legitimate questions and legitimate concerns, but what I think also needs to be pointed out is there has never been, to my knowledge, and I've done made quite a few calls and done quite a bit of research on this very bill, there has never been 1 ounce of misrepresentation or inappropriate allocation of funds, any of these funds, and these funds are used to bring eminent scholars to the state of Georgia. Eminent scholars that create thousands of jobs. People who are working on the Ebola virus, people who are working on a one-time flu vaccine, people who are working on sickle cell, people who are working on leukemia. These funds are used to fund the support staff and the equipment that these individuals require to do this research. You know, it's not by accident that University of Georgia and Georgia Tech and Augusta University, Georgia and Georgia Tech are the top 20 schools in the country, some of the hardest in the world to get in, and as is Augusta University. And these funds help make them that high value, high quality, impactful universities on not only our communities, not only our quality of life, but on our economy and on the well-being of our constituents. Mr. President, there are no questions. I yield the well.
You have no questions. Does any of the senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair sees none. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. What purpose does the pro tem rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State
Mr.
your
President.
inquiry.
Isn't it true, Mr. President, that a green vote on this bill is good for Georgia and good for our universities?
Certainly the gentleman knows of what he speaks.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Have all senators voted? Have all senators voted? Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 47, the nays are 6. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by a substitute. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 355?
House Bill 355 by Representative Wydower of the 119th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 5 of Chapter 6 of Title 12 of the OCGA relating to Georgia Carbon Sequestration Registry so as to provide for the inclusion of building products and construction on the registry and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Natural Resources and the Environment recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Harper of the 7th, Chairman. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 7th to speak to House Bill 355.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, the Senate House Bill 355 does a couple of simple things. It expands the Forest Carbon Registry, which was created in 2004 to encourage sustainable forest management and encourage the use of Georgia-grown forest products and building materials in the state of Georgia. And this program will allow those carbon credits to be sold on a global market. And obviously with Georgia having a number of Fortune 500 companies, that could be very beneficial to our state as a completely voluntary program. It also sets up a committee under the Georgia Forestry Commission to look at this and continue to validate this process. So if there are no questions, Mr. President, I yield the will.
You have no questions. You waited till I got to the bottom of the steps when you yielded. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 355? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill? All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes the majority leader for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we table the remainder of the rules calendar.
The majority leader has moved that we place the remainder of the rules calendar on the table. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the remainder of the rules calendar is placed on the table. All right, we're going to take a 30-minute lunch break. Lunch is out in the hallway, unless you've already made arrangements for different food. We'll be back in 30 minutes, 12:30. We'll stand at ease.